Good morning, everyone. Just want to check with staff to see if we're ready to roll this morning.
I think we're good to go, Joe.
Great, thanks, Chris. Well, let's get started. We'll reconvene the February council meeting this morning with our business session. First up is the committee report, starting with the executive committee. The committee met as a closed session to look at the reappointments and potential new appointments for the SSC. Apologies. We do have a draft motion coming out of the executive committee, but I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't know if I was turning this over to you or Brandon, if there's a presentation on the potential new members.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, there's a brief presentation, so if you're ready, we'll just go through that now.
I am. Yep, let's do it.
Okay. So as Joe indicated, we had a meeting of the executive committee yesterday, closed session, with one singular purpose to look at the Scientific and Statistical Committee membership. If you can go to the next slide, please, Stephen or Brandon. So as Joe indicated, at the meeting, we considered both reappointments and new membership. If you've had a chance recently to look at the council SOPs, or if you looked at the background information on SSC membership, the SOPs say that membership of the SSC is composed of federal employees, state employees, academicians, or independent experts, and members should have a strong scientific background and expertise in biological, statistical, economic, social, and other relevant disciplines. The SOPs do specify that we can have up to 20 members on our committee, and that the members are appointed by the council for a period of 3 years and may be reappointed at the discretion of the council, which is why we're here today. Next slide. So of the current membership, 5 of the 18 members are up for reappointment. These are those folks: Dr. Garrett DePiper, Dr. Jorge Holzer, Dr. Alexei Sherov, Dr. Gavin Fay, and Dr. Andrew Sheld. When we reached out to all these folks, they expressed strong interest in remaining on the SSC for another term. Next. We also have 2 openings. So not only are we considering those 5 individuals, but we have 2 openings because we had 2 SSC members that left, Rob Latour and Brian Rothschild. So we solicited 4 new members. We set that out earlier in the year, or late last year. Got 4 applicants from local, state, and academic institutions. They had a range of expertise. Here are those 4 folks: Dr. Jennifer Bigman, who's associated with the University of Delaware, Dr. Brooke Lohman, who's associated with the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, Dr. David O'Neill, who's with the Community College of Baltimore County, or is retired. He was with that college, and Dr. Ming Sun, who's with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And you can see the expertise there on the right side of the slide. The background information for all these individuals is available if you want to look at bios, or if you have any questions about them. Certainly, I'll do my best, or Brandon's online to answer questions about the individuals as well. Next slide. So we considered the applications. We considered the application at the staff level. We brought our recommendation to the executive committee yesterday. The executive committee considered the staff recommendation and basically developed a motion that you're going to see shortly to approve the reappointments of the 5 individuals and add these new members, and add 2 new members. And I'll tell you who those folks are in a minute. All of the folks, if approved, would begin their 3-year term effective March 1 of this year. Next. So there's the motion. The 2 individuals that were recommended by the executive committee include Dr. Ming Sun and Dr. Jennifer Bigman. With that, Joe, I'll turn it back to you since it's a motion from the committee, unless there's any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I guess we can certainly start with questions, if more or less either on process or I guess questions on the candidates, I would say, could also come during discussion on the motion. So if there's any process questions, let's take those first. Not seeing any. So we do have a motion coming out of committee, and I think we had a pretty good discussion amongst committee members on our comfort level. And so I'd appreciate any discussion from council members, either executive committee members, just letting everyone hear their thoughts, or other council members on both the reappointments and the new members. Hopefully folks have had a chance to go through those applications. So I'll look for any hands on discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chair, you get a chance, you should read that motion into the record, please.
Yes, thank you. So let me start with that, and then I'll go to Rich Wong. Thank you, Chris. Keep me up there. So the motion is to move to reappoint the list of 5 current members and appoint Dr. Ming Sun and Dr. Jennifer Bigman to the Scientific and Statistical Committee for a 3-year term beginning March 1st, 2026. And that's a motion out of committee. And I saw Rich Wong's hand. Go ahead, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm just saying, I would just like to say I wholly endorse Dr. Bigman. She's here in Delaware. She's a new professor, very smart, very easy to work with. And, you know, she's in a good position for us because she's just starting her tenure at UD. And so I think, we're going to get high engagement level, from Dr. Bigman. So it was a good choice. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that. Again, looking for other hands, including XCOM members.
How are you? How are you?
Yep, we got some feedback there.
Okay. I've probably said this before, but I'll say.
Well, I'm not seeing any other hands. I will just give then a brief little summary of XCOM. In that, I don't think this was a contentious vote by any means. I think it was both a staff comfort level and a comfort level amongst XCOM members that we were happy to have the current 5 members seeking reappointment, and thought that out of multiple good candidates, these 2 would be a very good fit for the SSC. So not seeing much further discussion, I guess I'll ask, is there any objection to the committee motion? Okay, not seeing any objection. I appreciate that. So we will consider this passed by consent, and we will let these members know, and as the motion states, the new folks will be brought on beginning March. So thank you. We can move on to the next agenda item, which is the Executive Director's Report. So Chris, will go back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Counsel, for that. We have an excellent SSC, and certainly look forward to working with the two new individuals. The notice will go out this week indicating the selection. Given that we went through that relatively quickly, means that I have more time for my Executive Director's Report, which is something we'll probably need this morning because there's a number of items behind the tab that I'd like to call your attention to. There's a couple that might require council action. To help facilitate the conversation this morning, Mary put together an excellent slide presentation that covers all the material behind the tab as well as the supplemental material. So with that, we'll get going. In terms of the first topic behind the tab, this is the 2026 council meeting topics. And this is the first time that you've seen this document. This basically keeps track of the things that we plan to do over the year, and it reflects the 2026 implementation plan. This is the plan that you approved in December. And basically, once we have that plan, we plan out those actions for the year. So if you take a look at that particular document, what I'm going to do is go through these meetings just to highlight a couple of things, just to show how those things do lay out over the year. The first meeting, or next meeting, is in April in Sunny's favorite place, New York, New York. Unfortunately, Sunny, it's not at the hotel; it's at another hotel. So I think we'll be fine though. The topics are listed there. We hope to take final action on the tilefish permit and reporting framework. Also, that final action on the EFH amendment. Remember, that's out for public hearing right now. We'll get an update like we typically do in April about habitat. We will be considering a new topic, which is that Winter 1 landings quota period threshold for SCUP. We haven't talked about that before. We haven't addressed it before in action, but we certainly will look at analysis in April. And other topics related to dogfish, monkfish, sturgeon. Also, remember on our list of new things for 2026, we have that multi-year specifications white paper. We'll be looking at that. And if we can drag the person who got the Rixie Savage Award to the meeting in April in New York, then we'll actually give him the award. So that will be our April meeting. Then we'll move on to June. A number of items there as well. Another full meeting. One of the things that we continue to do and will do every year, as long as the council wants to continue to do it, is look at the unmanaged commercial landings report that Julia works on. Also be looking at specifications for Chubb. We'll be talking about the final report for that GRA project. We've been talking about that for a while. Also reports on EAFM, reviewing golden tilefish and blue line and developing or looking at recommending blue line tilefish specifications for 27 through 29. And also be talking about an update on that regional offshore mitigation fund. One of the other things that isn't listed here, because it's not a meeting topic, is if you remember, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, 50th anniversary of the councils, 50th anniversary of Magnuson. So we will have a reception at this June meeting in Alexandria. Shelley's already scoped it out. There's a good place for that reception, and certainly take advantage of the location to invite some of the DC folks and have some good conversations about Magnuson. Next slide. Here's the August and October meetings, busy meetings. August is typically our busiest meetings. We will have new council members appointed at that, or sworn in at that particular meeting. Those dates bridge the last day for the folks that are leaving the council and the first day of the new folks. So we'll see how that's going to work out in terms of the actual meeting agenda. We will be electing officers. We'll be talking about all things summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass. Also be looking at specifications for surf clams and quahogs, bluefish specification review, looking at that we had here in August, this rec sector separation amendment approved range of alternatives for public hearings. Based on the conversation we had yesterday, that's not going to happen. We postponed that, and certainly we can talk about that again if you want. We also have taken care of the data collection white paper for the near term, and we won't be talking about that in August. We will be talking about butterfish specifications, butterfish, trip limits that could increase quota utilization, which is something that we identified in our 2026 implementation plan, as well as some the issue related to monkfish, the monkfish FMP. October's in duck, North Carolina. We haven't been there in a while. There's a number of things listed there. We basically will be looking at the implementation plan for 2027 and developing and approving that for consideration by the council in December. Also be looking at the Rixie Savage Award nominations again in executive committee. Hope to take final action on that alternative gear framework. We'll be looking at an evaluation of vessel baseline restrictions, which is something that we're working on with the New England Council. Looking at a white paper that Kylie's working on related to deep sea coral. We talked about NAFO. Well, ILEX issue yesterday. We'll be reviewing that analysis. Talking about 2027 squid specs, 2027 mackerel specs, 2027 spiny dogfish specs, and also the research track assessment for longfin squid, as well as another habitat activities. Next. And finally, December. So December, another busy meeting with the board, Summer Flounder Scut and Black Sea Bass board. We'll be talking about a 2027 implementation plan at that particular meeting and improving that for the upcoming year. Taking this also as it will change this rec sector separation amendment based on what we talked about yesterday, as well as the data collection white paper. That's going to change. We have an evaluation guidance on confidence intervals and uncertainty under the percent change approach. And that is something we talked about as part of our implementation plan for 2026. We'll be reviewing the SSC input and final project report on that. We'll be setting 2027 to 2029 longfin squid specs, and looking at the sturgeon bycatch project summary, the SBRM 3-year report, and hopefully presenting the Rick C. Savage Award. So I went through all that relatively quickly, Mr. Chair. Certainly, if folks have questions about that, why don't we just pause here? In terms of while you're thinking about your questions for the upcoming meetings, one question that you might have is how many days are we going to spend in New York? So it looks like the meeting would probably start at this point late Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, go through Thursday. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll ask for any questions before I move on to the other topics.
Okay, thanks, Chris. We can jump into this. Any questions for Chris on the meetings for the remainder of the year? Chris, I have one, and I apologize if I saw it.
Yeah.
You mentioned we haven't met in Duck in a while. Is this going to be at the same hotel that we met at the last time? Do you know?
If the last hotel was the Sanderling, yes.
Yeah, that's my recollection anyway.
Yeah. It gets a little fuzzy, but yeah, that's where we're meeting. Yeah, we haven't been there in a while, so look forward to that meeting.
Yeah, nice spot. Very good. Okay, I see Lori Nolan's hand. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, I think it was on August, on the August schedule, there's a flag about monkfish and an ITQ is mentioned.
Right.
And that hasn't gotten much airtime. And I just think there it is, ITQs, right? A pretty big move for management. So I'm just wanting the states around the table right now that have a monkfish industry. I'm doing the best I can to spread the word. There'll be a scoping. New England's going out for scoping. They'll hit New York and New Jersey. Those are the only two states in the mid that they're scheduled to hit. And this is moving. I mean, this has real traction to it. So it's moving. So it's just awareness, and maybe for everyone to reach out if you know a monkfish guy, and try to weigh in. There'll be a webinar for scoping also. So just to get the Mid-Atlantic industry on notice and get people thinking and talking about this to decide. It is a joint plan. So at the end of the day, we all have to agree to whatever changes we're going to make. So just to have awareness to all of us that this is on the schedule for New England, and it's moving.
Yeah, thank you, Lori, for that. We are closely tracking the monkfish action, as you know. Lori's on the monkfish committee. For folks that don't know, we do have a monkfish committee that meets with the committee members from New England, so it's a combined committee. Jason is the staffer tracking monkfish for us. We did ask that that these scoping hearings occur in New Jersey, New York. Jason, do you have anything to add quickly relative to monkfish and Lori's comments?
I think you just covered it. I've had some discussions with the New England staff. Sometimes it's hard to get folks out for these scoping hearings, but we'll, have a plan to try to kind of add to their efforts to advertise those meetings when they come up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and as Lori indicated, we if you had asked us a year ago if we would be dealing with IFQs and monkfish, we would have said no, but we are. And given the potential importance of that topic to, not the potential, but the importance of that topic to the Mid-Atlantic, certainly we want to keep close track of that. Other questions?
Add that, we went through a similar process maybe a decade ago with potential move to either reduction of latent capacity or IFQs, and there's kind of mixed perspectives, and it eventually was shelved. There have been some preliminary discussions that I think because it's a New England kind of centered FMP, that it likely has to go through a referendum also. So that could be a component of it. And then, how that referendum is executed, we're kind of trying to figure it out because we haven't done one of those or haven't done one in a while. So yeah, they're just kind of spinning things up. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions about planned council meeting topics for 2026?
Chris, I'll just jump in, and I apologize. I had a little trouble hearing Jason, but
Yeah.
and I know we're not in person, but we do have Ted Platt online, and I would encourage our council members to to talk to Ted, our New England Council liaison, and maybe at our upcoming meetings as well. If you get a hold of him, I'm sure he could also help fill us in. And I would say to the state folks that are on the council, myself representing New Jersey, and especially the New York folks, for us to make sure that we're putting out this information as well, particularly regarding the scoping meetings, to make sure we're getting the best attendance we can. So that was the only follow-up I had. And while I was talking, I didn't see any other hands come up, Chris. So I guess we're good on the meetings.
Sounds good. Okay, Mary, if you go back to the last slide. So let's go to, all right, so this December meeting, the other thing that I wanted to point out is we're also working on a celebration for that particular meeting as well in Annapolis, another reception, again, highlighting our activities over the last and successes over the last 50 years. And we'll talk more about that as time goes on. Next slide, please. These are the typical documents that you see every time that I talk relative to the Executive Director's Report. These are the council actions under development. We have 4 listed there. We talked about the Rec Sector Separation Amendment yesterday. I'm not going to talk about that today unless folks have questions about it. We are in a public comment period that ends today relative to the Omnibus Essential Fish Habitat Amendment. We've had good interaction with folks relative to that amendment. So looking forward to final action on that at the April meeting. We talked a little bit about that gear framework and the fact, I think everyone recognizes that we postponed any action on that. And we expect that NIST will be issuing an RFI, a request for information, in 2026 relative to that particular framework. Last, there's that tilefish reporting framework. We will have a public input meeting on March 2nd to gather feedback on potential changes to those requirements, and then we'll bring action. We'll bring the input and further refine the alternatives for the council to take final action in April. Next. There's also a status document in terms of other actions that we have relative to the last year or so. We're still waiting on word for relative to that summer flounder mesh exemption framework. We did see a proposed rule last September. As we understand it, is still under review. We haven't had any action on it since then. You can see also related to some of the other things that we've done over the last year or so that, for example, that species separation requirement amendment for surf clam and ocean quahog. We did have a notice of availability published at the end of the year for that particular action. So that, as I understand it, that NOAA will be out for 60 days. NIMS will review the comments that it receives at the end of that period, and then make a decision as to approval or disapproval. And then we would have another proposed rule related to any sort of management measures that would actually implement the requirements. And you can see the other ones there as it relates to specs and the other frameworks. Next, Mary, please. So the next item beyond the tab is the agenda for our NRCC meeting. I think everyone on the call understands the importance of the NRCC. We were not able to have our typical November NRCC meeting because of the government shutdown. But we did have this intersessional because there was a number of items that we needed to address sooner rather than later. You can see the topics on the agenda. Basically, as a result of that meeting, we did approve a 2027 assessment schedule. We'll be taking a look at that again in May at our next NRCC meeting. We did pause the Assessment Oversight Panel Research Track Steering Committee, and that'll remain paused through 2026. We did discuss the importance of returning to a 5-year stock assessment planning cycle, and we'll be talking more about that at the May 2026 meeting. And also we agreed to form a regional working group in support of the framework for narrowing the scope of NIMS management and science, which is the risk value matrix that we'll talk about in a little bit. Next. The other documents behind the tab are the typical documents that we provide to the council at every meeting. The first one is the Protected Resources Pulse that Hayden does for the council. Hayden included a North Atlantic right whale update in that newsletter this month. There's been some developments, notable developments since we went to put that newsletter in the briefing book. As of January 29th, there's been 21 new mother-calf pairs documented in this year's right whale calving season. On January 30th, one more pair was sighted, bringing the total to 22. So since 2018, annual births have fluctuated from 0 to 20 calves. So 22 represents a relatively strong calving season by the recent standards. Unfortunately, there's also a newly confirmed right whale mortality. A 4-year-old male known as Division died from entanglement injuries. Partial carcass was sighted offshore of Avon, North Carolina on January 27th. Efforts to reduce whale entanglement risk continue through on-demand gear testing as of February 1. Commercial lobstermen working with the Northeast Fishery Science Center are testing fully on-demand fishing gear in the South Island restricted area and the Massachusetts restricted area. If you're interested, additional details on the experimental fishery and other testing activities are included in the bulletin. There's a link there if you're interested. In the newsletter, Hayden also highlighted new findings on short-nosed sturgeon migration in the southeast. 2 tagged individuals were documented traveling about 425 kilometers along the Atlantic coast, which is much further than previously observed maximum, which was about 200 to 250 kilometers. Also, there's a regulatory update in her newsletter. On January 2nd, NOAA Fisheries published an interim final rule modifying the harbor porpoise take reduction plan. That rule would reduce the minimum twine size for large mesh gill nets in the Mid-Atlantic from 0.9 millimeters to 0.81 millimeters. This regulatory action aligns the take reduction plan with the low profile gillnet gear requirements that exist under the monkfish FMP and will allow fishermen to comply with both sets of regulations without maintaining two sets of gear. I'm going to take a break there, Mr. Chair, see if there's any questions about any of those items.
Yeah, sounds good. So any questions from council members on what Chris has presented here so far? Chris, not seeing any.
Okay.
I don't know, just with these particular updates, maybe if we could, we'd go out to the public to see if there are any hands from the public regarding these. I know some of them would just be giving them the proper places to go. So any members of the public, if you have questions on what Chris has presented here? Still not seeing any, Chris. Although I'm sorry, I'm a little low down on the list. Hang on. I just realized I wasn't at the top of the list there. Megan Lapp, sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Megan Lapp, Seafreeze. I just had a question, Chris. On one of your previous slides, it said that you had submitted the mackerel specifications on February 5th. Is that the council submitting them to GARFO?
Yeah, if you go back to that slide, Mary, just so I know what Megan's referencing. The initial submission is expected, or was, yeah, exactly. So this is basically us packaging the document, the material, and submitting it to GARFO to begin the review. Yes.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Megan. Chris, I don't see any other hands. So.
Okay. All right. The next item behind the tab is the offshore wind update that Julia does for us at every council meeting. We still are involved in offshore wind issues. We have had a lot of activity since the last time we talked about wind as it relates to pauses and unpauses. In December, the Department of Interior paused construction of all 5 offshore wind projects which were under construction. The justification for that pause was based on reports on national security risks. States and developers sued, and by this point, legal rulings have allowed construction for all 5 projects to resume while those legal cases continue to play out. We've had a couple of conversations about regional fund administration for the state-led efforts on fisheries compensation mitigation. There was a public meeting on February 2nd to provide updates on that work. You can find links to learn more about that in the memo. We hope to have that group come to the council meeting in June so that we can discuss the proposed requirements of the process for compensation. In December, the state of Maryland opened an invitation for bids for an offshore wind power purchase agreement. And the way that things work, that power purchase agreement is an important step in the financing of offshore wind projects. Finally, the memo also includes the usual links for where to find notices to mariners with construction updates and other ways to find out more about offshore wind energy development. The next item behind the tab is the update that we typically see on the Inflation Reduction Act projects. We get that every meeting from Brandon and Kylie. Just as a reminder, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, was passed by Congress in 2022. It provided the 8 councils with $20 million to support the development and advancement of climate-related fisheries management implementation efforts. We used our allocation to develop 8 projects. Status updates for all 8 of those are provided in the table. We heard about one of them yesterday. We had a good discussion on that, the River Herring and Shad project. Additional information on the IRA projects, including the 1-page project summaries that we talked about a couple meetings ago, can be found on the web if you're interested. Next. So we typically don't get a lot from Congress directly, but we did get this letter. This is our response. This is actually the response, our response to questions from Representative Sarah Elfreth, who is a congresswoman in Maryland. This is dated January 30, 2026. If you haven't had a chance, take a look at that letter. Basically, this is our response to all their questions. I think it's a 6 or 7 page letter. And basically, the focus of the letter is how reductions in personnel and funding at NOAA impacted our ability to sustainably manage fisheries. So again, if you haven't had a chance to look at the letter, you should. This letter was drafted, sent out to Council for review. You've seen it before. I think that we provided great answers to all of her questions, and hopefully it helped. We haven't gotten any response back from the Congresswoman, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with the letter, but we did send it in. Next, please. Next slide. So the next item behind the tab relates to the Marine Resource Education Program. There's the crew that was at the recent meeting, January 12th through 16th. If you look closely, you can see a number of our folks in that particular photo. As I understand it, it was another excellent MRIP meeting. The letter is to the director, Gene Brown, who basically indicating that we want to highlight the importance of MRIP in the Mid-Atlantic. We thank GMRI for basically supporting MRIP and indicating how important it is to us. So again, a good program, and certainly one that we will continue to support. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, see if there's any questions about any of that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I would also like to take an opportunity to commend council staff on the response to that letter to the Maryland representative. I agree. It was, I think, excellent composition of answering some tough questions. So any questions for Chris on what was presented here? Okay, Chris, not seeing any.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mary. So this is another letter. This is the CCC letter to the Secretary Lutnick and Henyo, the Assistant Administrator for NIMS, regarding timely review of council actions. If you've had a chance, the letter highlights that, or notes that the councils are universally experiencing a delay in the review and approval of regulatory actions related to their fisheries. So I documented, or I gave you an example of a couple that pertain to the Mid-Atlantic. And this is, again, something that all of the councils are experiencing. It's troubling to the councils. There's been delays that are much longer than what we've experienced at some of the other councils, and folks are becoming increasingly concerned. We point out in the letters that that prolonged review timelines can create uncertainty, disrupt business planning, delay conservation benefits, and erode stakeholder confidence in the process. So the letter encourages NOAA to prioritize timely review of council actions, and when delays are unavoidable, to communicate clearly with the councils regarding anticipated timelines, outstanding issues, and pathways to resolution. So if you haven't had a chance, take a look at that letter. Next. The next couple letters in the beyond the tab are correspondence regarding our request for proposals titled Strategies for Improving Access and Quota Utilization in the Atlantic Surf Clam and Ocean Quag ITQ fishery. Those two letters are from Sea-Watch and Atlantic Capes. The full RFP is available for those folks that are interested. You can find that on our website. I also should note that we received several other letters from surf, climate, ocean quag industry participants regarding the RFP. Those were directly emailed to the council. These 2 letters are in the briefing book because the folks that the authors requested that we include them in the briefing book. So just quick background for folks that might be interested in this topic and wondering what's going on. Remember that this RFP, this request for proposal, is a product of discussions we began almost a year ago. And it's an RFP, so it's a request for proposal. It's not a proposal to change anything. There's no management action associated with the proposal. It's related to the executive order. So remember, in April of 25, President Trump signed Executive Order 14276, which is restoring America's seafood competitiveness. The councils were asked to identify actions to stabilize markets, improve access, enhance profitability, and prevent fisheries closures. We received a letter in May from Henyo requesting our input. And June and July of 25, we had an open comment period. We reached out to the public for any comments they might have on the topic. And in August, we reviewed a staff options paper. And in September, the council sent the letter to NEFSC documenting what we proposed to do in response to the EO, including the development of a white paper. And this is a white paper with a rationale that modifications to the ITQ program could remove barriers to entry and increase utilization of quota. We released an RFP in January, and that deadline for proposals is March 31 of this year. We expect that once we go through the review of the proposals that we receive, and we have had some interest from a few folks relative to the proposals. So I expect that we're not going to get a lot of proposals. We'll probably get maybe 4, maybe 5, so not a lot. But once we have those, we go through the review, select the contractor. We're looking at a 12 to 18 month project. So we're going to be finding a contractor, expertise in fisheries economics, social sciences, natural resource economics, and skills in fisheries management, data analysis to basically do this project for us. And then that final report will be presented to the council. And once that report is available, certainly will involve AP folks. It'll be publicly available for anyone that wants to comment on it. And once we're done with that, the council can determine whether or not it wants to take any action on it at that point. So I think I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and see if there's any questions about that or anything else I've talked about.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? Nope, no questions, Chris.
Okay. So everyone take a deep breath because I'm not done yet. So the reason I'm not done yet is because there's a number of supplemental items that came in either after we put the briefing book together or something that just happened very recently. So the first one is a letter to the South Atlantic Council. Remember, we've had discussion on this topic before. We being the Mid-Atlantic Council, agreed to establish a joint council subcommittee with the South Atlantic Council to help determine the allocation of blue line tilefish, ABC north of Cape Hatteras. We sent a letter to John Carmichael, who's the executive director of the South Atlantic Council, indicating that we'd like to get this subcommittee going as soon as practicable because there's a timeline. Obviously, we need to get the specs set, and we talk about in the letter the purpose of the subcommittee, and what our proposal is that the composition of the subcommittee include 3 council members from each council and 1 SSC member from each council. And we talked that we would like to have an initial meeting, and we think it might be a good idea to have this meeting in person in late March or early April. So that letter went to John. I got a response from John, indicated that he would be discussing the letter with his council at their meeting in March. So we'll see what the response is. The next item is a little more detailed and complicated because it involves this risk value matrix. And we have a few slides on that particular topic. So this is the CCC letter to NEMS regarding a proposed risk value matrix. And I can't remember if, in fact, I've discussed this with the council before at any length. We first talked about this topic after the May 2025 CCC meeting, but basically it comes down to this. So this is a risk value matrix that is basically a proposed framework that NIMS folks are proposing to narrow the scope of their management and science, and specifically highlighting the fact that they cannot continue to manage the 500 plus stocks and complexes that they do that are currently do and that includes nationwide. And as I indicated, we talked about it first in May of 2025. We had a final process presented to the council executive directors in a separate meeting in January. And basically, the NIMS is making the point that it wants to balance national consistency and interoperability with regional flexibility while maintaining accountability. Next slide. So here's the matrix. So it has 4 basic categories: high risk, low value, high risk, high value, low risk, high value, low risk, low value, and each one of those categories, basically represent would be used, not represent, would be used in a way that basically take managed stocks and put them in each one of those boxes. Next slide. So we've considered this process several times at several meetings. As you might imagine, there was considerable consternation expressed by the executive directors regarding this process. We expressed that in a letter. We basically are continuing to move forward with the idea at the regional level. And the letters that we've sent to NIMS and subsequent conversations, we've indicated to them that we believe that a bottom-up approach, basically working from the regions to headquarters instead of from headquarters to the regions, is the way to go. We will have this working group that will be operating at the regional level to basically develop the matrix from a regional perspective. The folks in headquarters have asked that the regional folks submit information to them by June 30th. And basically, once that information then goes into headquarters, they'll consolidate it into a national matrix and basically use that matrix to reassess resource priorities and inform FY27 planning. Next slide. So here's our concerns, we being the CCC. Again, just to reiterate, significant concerns regarding both the process used to develop the matrix and the implications of the framework. Pointing out that in the letter that the councils have not been adequately consulted, that adoption of any matrix could diminish or displace meaningful council and constituent input, that the matrix incorporates embedded assumptions that have not been discussed. And in the letter, there's several questions that we ask for clarification. At this point, none of those questions have been answered. What decisions will the matrix support? What type of alternative management approaches could be applied to those 4 quadrants? How will the council's role be preserved? And will decisions be influenced by the matrix without council concurrence? Next slide. Go back, Mary. I'm sorry. I thought there was another one. So I'm not sure exactly how all of this is going to play out. We are at the regional level involved with the working group. Membership includes me and Brandon. That working group will meet soon to consider how to proceed, and then we'll just see how it what happens over the next several months. Given the new timeline, which allows for submission of regional recommendations in June, means that we'll have time at the April council meeting to discuss where we're at with this. Certainly bring forward to the council any sort of recommendations that we're making relative to the matrix and have a good conversation at the council level. So I'm going to stop there, Mr. Chair. There's a lot there, but certainly if there's any questions, now's a good time to ask them.
Agreed, Chris. Thank you. I have one hand up so far. Lori Nolan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wow, Chris, I mean, when you showed us this back on, I think it was slide 7, it looked like it was further out in the works than what you're showing us right now. I was going to ask a question on it when you brought it up, but it was
Sure.
sort of like, coming later, I thought, than right now. This
Right.
is moving. This is a train that's moving too. So
Correct.
I kind of wrote down a couple questions, but like my first concern is when you look at the matrix and the 4 quadrants, this is now something that's going to be determined with or without like you and Brandon and all the identified people that are going to work together on this, and what is the ramifications on just say a fishery that falls into low risk, low value? I mean, is this a matter of how much attention the specific fisheries are going to receive, or and is the regional office up in our GARFO, are they overloaded tremendously that this is going to have a high impact on the mid-Atlantic species also? Or you say this 500 species around our world, is the mid-Atlantic and New England's GARFO office so overloaded that they need to go down this road and implement this heavily? Should we expect a lot of our species to be affected by this? I don't know. This is kind of scary, I'll say.
Right.
It's a little scary to know what the future is going to bring. So your presentation before, your letter before, describing that we don't get response quickly enough from the service when we're submitting packages, whatever they are. We're not, the councils aren't getting their answers quickly enough. I mean, I guess this is to justify that. I don't know. This is weird.
So there's a lot there, Lori, and you said, you asked a number of questions, and I'll see if I can recap, and certainly if I miss anything, let me know. But also, Mike Pentney, I'm going to turn to you at some point and see if you have any additional comments. But in terms of some of the specifics, the details still haven't been worked out. So, for example, how do you what box would something like your favorite golden tilefish go in? Which one of those boxes? So we don't know if there's a low risk, low value species or stock complex, then it's likely that that's going to receive less attention, right? It's a lower priority than something that's high risk, high value, right? So that's implied by the development of the matrix. So it all relates to the resource squeeze that NIMS is facing as a result of people leaving the agencies and reduced funding, right? And their idea relative to how do we, given these resource limitations, what do we do? How do we allocate our resources in 2027? So it's a wise thing to plan. Certainly, we understand that there's going to be resource limitations from personnel perspective, from money perspective, from a time perspective, and you need to establish priorities. We get that. However, we don't think that establishing establishing those priorities without significant council input is the way to go. And we don't think that establishing priorities from headquarters through this matrix, then having it flow down to the regions without significant input from the regions is appropriate. So we continue to push back. And initially, we're basically having some impact on the conversations. I'm not sure exactly how it's all going to play out, but we did have an initial deadline that they were proposing of April. We got that extended to June, so that's a good thing. We are, like I said earlier, going to continue to work at the regional level through this working group to figure out how our species fit into this particular, quadrant. Each one of those species fits into the quadrants. So it's going to be interesting in terms of how that happens. But again, we are, from my perspective, we are going to move forward in a slower, more deliberative approach. We're going to bring any recommendations to the council for their consideration as well, and hope for the best, and hopefully nothing that we are very interested in managing gets left by the wayside. With that, Mike, I'll turn to you, see if you have any additional comments.
Thanks, Chris. You captured a lot of it. I think those of us that have been looking at this and working on this from the regional perspective, agree 100% that this should be a bottom-up initiative. That there is some potential value in doing the work and sort of assessing where all of our different stocks are relative to this type of matrix. I think some of the initial questions that we expect the regional working group to look at is, what's the threshold for high value versus low value? What do we assess? Surely ex-vessel revenue, gross ex-vessel revenue on an annual basis by species is easy to do. How do we assess the value of species that are more important on a recreational side as well? So there's some, criteria that we need to develop and thresholds we need to establish for what's a high value, what's a low value. On the risk side, it's a little more subjective. What are some of the criteria that we should be evaluating for risk, ecosystem services, forage, importance of the fishery, importance to fishing communities, things like that. And then again, setting some thresholds that help us distinguish high risk from low risk. But I think, I would urge people not to get too concerned about this. Lori Nolan said she's worried. I wouldn't be too worried. The way I'm looking at this is, and for the Mid-Atlantic, honestly, I think there's not a whole lot that will be done. I think the New England Council, with some of the groundfish species, some of the skate species that we really don't do much with, they're not a target species, but they're in the plan. Those might be evaluated to be ecosystem component stocks instead of actively managed, or there might be a rationale to remove a stock from an FMP and alleviate some stress there. The Mid-Atlantic Council, just as an example, think about chub mackerel. The quota has been about 4.5 million pounds ever since we implemented the FMP, but it's being a mere small fraction of that is being landed every year. Is there a lot of risk with that fishery? It's certainly not providing a lot of value. Now, I'm not suggesting we remove it, but maybe instead of having to do specs on a frequent basis, we have to publish a rule every year to confirm the quota each year. Maybe that's an opportunity for us to put the 4.5 million pound quota in the actual reg text, and then we never change it unless something happens. And then the council would have the ability to review, landings on an annual basis. If something changes, they could take action, but the sort of regulatory demand on that, for that fishery would be reduced. And so, I think those are the types of things we're looking at in terms of this being, sent up at a national level. I think that's where, there might be some rebalancing of the resources. If a certain region finds themselves over capacity for what they need and another region is under capacity, there might be some resource shifts there. That could happen within the science enterprise or the management enterprise. But I think first and foremost, it should be a regional effort to populate the matrix for all of our stocks. And then once we populate the matrix, then we can make decisions about whether anything should change in terms of how we assess how frequently we get science information and what the management response is, through time.
Thanks, Mike. So Julia is going to be very disappointed that chub mackerel falls to the bottom of the stack, but we can talk about that later. The probably I'm more in the camp of being troubled by this and having some anxiety, and the anxiety relates to one of Mike's last comments, which is how's this matrix going to be used to allocate resources to each one of the regions, right? And we hear at every meeting how constrained GARFO and the Science Center are relative to their resources. And certainly we don't want any additional constraints to be imposed on the north, in the Northeast as a result of this particular matrix. So that's one of my biggest concerns. Any other questions on the risk value matrix?
Could I just follow up, Chris?
Sure.
So I get that concern, and certainly I share that concern as well. I don't want to see my resources diminished, and I don't want to see the resources available to our science center diminished at all, because as you say, we are already, our capacity is far less than the demand that we're trying to meet. But I think trying to look at this as with the glass half full through an optimist's lens. If the agency only has, I'm going to pull a number out of the air, they have $10 million to spend. How much do they allocate to each of the science centers? The agency has to make a decision. And if it's not informed by anything other than, what the information that the headquarters currently has, then it's not being informed it's not a constructive, intelligent way to move forward. This bottom-up approach, by assessing our stocks, populating this matrix, making some decisions at the local level about how and whether and how we might shift things around, will then can be used so that if there is a constraint that has to be addressed, then it's being informed by the work that we first do at the regional level, rather than simply being imposed on us, from headquarters based on some assumptions which may or may not be true.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. And again, I still have some anxiety, but as long as we continue to work at it from a bottom-up approach, and I understand the limitations that NIMS has, and certainly in terms of money, people, time, and we will hopefully be successful in communicating how important the things that we do in the Northeast are, and continue to have support that we need to get these things done. So with that, Mr. Chair, unless there's any other questions, I'll move to the next slide.
Can
Yeah,
I
thanks,
just
Chris.
jump on? I'm sorry. I don't know
yeah,
if my hand isn't showing. Sorry.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I would just, Mike, thank you for everything you said, because there's way more clarity in my mind. And I appreciate the push for the bottom up approach from Chris and from Mike. I think that's absolutely the way to go. I just will throw out, Mike mentioned the chub mackerel, but we as the MID setting specifications for our species year after year, it keeps being mentioned in the background, sort of the multi-year spec idea. And on some of our species, we certainly have it, but it just seems 3 years is the furthest so far we've been willing to go out. And I know going through the stock assessment process, there are some species that the MID manages where 5 years has been put on the table as a comfort level. Like, why not set golden tilefish specifications for 5 years? Not that there's not a review, but like Mike described with chub mackerel, if nothing changes, then there's nothing there's no rubber stamping, there's nothing that needs to be done to reduce the burden. So maybe when we're setting our specifications this year, next year, as all the species come up one by one, we should really focus on, could we extend the timeline longer than what's being set right now for?
Yeah, an excellent point, Lorraine. In fact, we've had the conversations about multi-year specs. So remember, one of the tasks on our 2026 implementation plan is the development of a white paper to look at multi-year specifications. So basically reviewing where we're at with each one of our species and looking for efficiencies or ways to be more effective, that basically account for where we're at with stock assessments, when we're going to get stock assessments, what we really need to do relative to setting, do specs have to change every year, all of that. So I can't remember what council meeting we're going to be looking at that document. It's later in the year, but that will be on the table for the council to consider. If we find that, in fact, we can change specification cycle or change the frequency of specs in a way that makes things more efficient, we're certainly going to take a look at that, and hopefully the council will recommend doing that.
Great.
All right, Chris, we have one more hand, so I appreciate John Hare putting his hand up so we can get some comments from the Science Center, and who's also an important part of this process. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to note that we have the Northeast Regional Coordinating Council, and that all of us, Science Center, GARFO, the two councils, and ASNFC, continually look at sort of our priorities and make sure our work is aligned. My looking at the other parts of the country, some of the other regions don't have that, and so I think our NRCC structure, our continually focus on working together to set priorities, will put us in a good place in terms of doing this task for headquarters.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. So, Chris, before I hand it back to you to move on, I just want to say that, as we've mentioned, as the CCC letter mentioned, as Mike Pentney mentioned, we have hopes that this is a bottom-up approach, but instead of going to the public right now, considering how we've heard from John and Mike and you on how we see our roles in this, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions. I would just ask that the public stay engaged as the process moves forward. But for right now, I think we've kind of answered all the questions we can. So I'll turn it back over to you to move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to now turn it over to Mary. We have a couple other items that she's going to handle for me. So, Mary.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I have two topics I'm going to cover here at the end of your report. The first one, there's a memo posted as a supplemental item on the meeting page related to a photo contest. So I mentioned this when I gave the last update on plans for the 50th anniversary. We are launching a photo contest. We'll be sending out an announcement about it tomorrow. We're asking people to send us their best photos that capture the region's fisheries and fishing communities. We can't give prizes, but the best photos will be featured in an online photo gallery on the council's 50th anniversary page, displayed in the council's office, and then used in future council communication and outreach materials with credit to the photographer. So all the details about that contest are available on the webpage I've linked here on the slide and in the memo. And we would really appreciate your help getting the word out to anybody who might be interested. This is our first time doing a photo contest, and we're hoping to make it maybe an annual thing if it goes well, so that we can keep getting fresh photos into our library. Before I move on to the next topic, I wanted to mention something that I don't have a slide for, but so Shelley has been working very hard to get a custom storefront set up for the council. Several council members have asked about getting council branded shirts, hats, vests, that sort of thing. So we have that set up, and we're going to be sending out information and a link very shortly. You can go on there, pick out what you want, whatever colors or items, and have it shipped directly to you. So we hope people will find something like they like on there and represent the council brand. Okay, so the last thing in the tab relates to the seafood executive order, which we've already spent quite a bit of time talking about last year. Most of you should remember that the council developed a list of 20 recommendations to reduce the burdens on U.S. fisheries and address various objectives identified in the executive order, such as increasing access to fisheries, reducing barriers, that sort of thing. In addition to the councils, all of the regional councils going through that exercise, NEFSC also conducted a public comment process and solicited public input on ways to address the objectives of that EO. So they collected comments between August 27th and October 14th, and then they reopened it from December 1st to December 15th. They have summarized all of the comments received and then distributed those to the councils. They provided a spreadsheet which is linked on the meeting page that identifies comments they've kind of grouped them by council. We don't get the actual comments. They've said that they contain personally identifiable information, and so we're just getting the summary of comments. They've asked us to review the relevant comments and consider whether any updates to the initial recommendations and work plans are needed. The councils have until April 30th to submit any modifications to the plans. And if the councils decide that no changes are needed, we just need to let NEFSC know. So this right here, this slide shows the comments that NEFSC flagged as being Mid-Atlantic related. I'm going to go through on the next slide. I've kind of grouped these concepts into a few categories that I'm going to run through on the next slide. I'm not going to read all the comments here, but these are available both in the spreadsheet and this presentation is posted online. It was originally 13 in the spreadsheet, but 2 of them were duplicates, so I just consolidated those. All right, so the first category of recommendations includes things that the council has already addressed in its executive order response. There were 3 comments related to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service squid export issue, where squid are currently not considered to be either shellfish or fishery products, and so they're subject to additional regulation. There was a recommendation to remove horsepower restrictions on commercial permits. This is something that the Mid-Atlantic and New England councils will be looking at together to consider whether modifications to the vessel baseline restrictions are needed. There was a suggestion to create a separate for-hire category, which the council is considering that and related issues through the sector separation amendment. And then there were at least one, but I think NEFSC received quite a few comments related to the reversal of Northeast monument fishing restrictions. And as most of you are probably aware, there were some developments on that late last week, and President Trump has lifted those commercial fishing restrictions in the monument area. The next category of comments is things that are related to council managed species. It may not necessarily be things that the council has the authority to take action on, but these are at least council species related. There was a recommendation to add northern snapper as an FDA acceptable name for scup. There were quite a few comments related to the surf clam and ocean quahog fisheries. One related to the Georges Bank paralytic shellfish poisoning closure, which I believe the council has commented on in the past and made efforts to address this issue. And then some additional comments about excluding the southern stock from undersized computations, streamlining aquaculture permitting, clarifying processing versus blanching, modernizing NEPA, using EFPs for innovation, and improving data access. And as you can see, we're kind of, we're working with limited information here. In some cases, I think we're missing a little bit of the context and detail that was probably provided to NIMPS in those comments. And then lastly, in this category for spiny dogfish, there was a recommendation to create a market for spiny dogfish and remove unnecessary protections for the stock. In the category of that, I kind of grouped as things related to New England Council regulations. This top one does relate to a council managed species, but it is a New England regulation, restoring surf clam fishery access to the Great South Channel Habitat Management Area. This is something that council discussed at the December meeting during the implementation plan discussion. This is a priority. This has been identified on the New England Council's priorities for this year, and the Mid-Atlantic Council agreed to support that effort in whatever ways are needed. Additionally, there were comments on or recommendations to eliminate industry-funded monitoring and open northern edge scallops. So I think, that probably was miscategorized as a Mid-Atlantic related comment and would more appropriately be included under the New England Council. All right. And then here we've got, there were a number of comments related to, I broadly categorized as funding related, 2 comments about returning SK funding to its original purpose, and then comments on supporting seafood marketing through block grants, stop the clawback of marine cares funds, invest in science, restore grant funding, and fund research / waterfronts. And then lastly here, I grouped these as other issues outside of the council's purview. Expand government purchasing of SCUP. There was a comment opposing the expansion of the seafood import monitoring program. 1 or 2 comments on aquaculture reform, several comments about offshore wind development, and then a recommendation to designate prime U.S. commercial fishing grounds to prevent wind development. So this is kind of just, a rough overview of the comments that we got in the form that we got them. As next steps, the council can, say today, no, I think we, are pretty well covered with the 20 recommendations that we submitted back in September, or the council could direct staff to, look further into any of these issues, and then we could come back in April and discuss any changes to the to our original executive order response. From staff's perspective, nothing jumps out at me as being recommendations that the council could easily take action on beyond what we've already identified in the EO response, but we're open to council direction on how to proceed with this. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Mary. I really appreciate that summary. So I'll look to council members to Mary's question, and if there are any questions so far or just discussions on what's been presented. Not seeing any hands, Mary, I'll say that, I agree with the initial recommendations. I know particularly the CARES Act funding, that money was distributed through the commissions. I'd say it's more of a commission issue. As for those of you that follow that or that are part of the commission, you know that it's also a New Jersey issue. So I'm not really sure where that would fall into for the council, other than one of the member states is the impacted state. Lori, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In October, on our top meeting topics, we're evaluating the vessel baseline restriction. On what Mary just shared with us was a question of horsepower. Will that be part of that evaluation when we do the baseline restrictions? Horsepower is part of that, I'm assuming. And in that case, we're taking care of one of those things anyway, it looks like.
Mary, I'll take care of this. The answer is yes. So we'll, if you, Lori, if you take a look at what we submitted in our response last September, it involved exactly that, looking at baseline restrictions. So that would be part of it. So yeah, as Mary indicated, a number of the things that we've already submitted cover some of the items that came out in this new list of things, right? And while I have the mic, the other thing to point out is that we already have a 2026 implementation plan, right? So anything that we do, beyond this point, would it involve some modification to that plan. So you need to think about it from that perspective as well.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the response. And I don't see any other hands, Mary. So
okay. Well, I think, Mr. Chair, at this point we are done. And certainly, if there's any questions about any of the things that we presented this morning, certainly you can ask them now. Or if you think about things later, just reach out to me, and I'll be glad to get back to you.
okay. Yep. Still not seeing any hands. So we'll go on to the sorry. Okay, I guess we do have a hand from the audience. So Todd Elder, I saw your hand in the comments.
Joe, I think Todd's issue is going to be handled in at the end of the meeting in other business.
Okay, all right, at the end. Very good. All right, so we'll go to the organizational reports, and I'll look to Mike Pentney for the GARFO report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris actually covered a couple of the things, but I do have a few announcements just to catch everybody up on where things stand for a number of actions. On January 13th, we published the notice of availability for Amendment 25, the revised Amendment 25 to the Northeast Multi-Species FMP. New England Council action, obviously, but does affect a number of people in the Mid-Atlantic who have groundfish permits. So this is the amendment that would revise the stocks of Atlantic cod from the 2 stocks that we've always managed them as to 4 stocks. If you recall, the New England Council submitted an amendment in 2024 that was disapproved. So this is a revised amendment that the council has prepared to address the reasons for the disapproval. The notice of availability is open until March 16th. We do not yet have a proposed rule, however. So if you're interested in the regulatory text for that, please keep your eye on the Federal Register. Hopefully it will publish soon, but can't make any promises. On December 23rd, we published a temporary rule implementing the 2026 Atlantic herring specifications. This action finalized the previously projected 2026 quotas including the river herring and shad catch caps. All the specifications that we published for this year are consistent with the New England Council's recommendations, and that covers the Atlantic herring fishery through the end of the calendar year. Shortly after the start of the year, on January 12th, we published a temporary rule implementing a 2,000-pound possession limit for herring in Herring Management Area 1B, and that began on January 9th. This is one of the 4 herring management areas that typically has a very small allocation or sub-ACL, and that was caught, 92% of the Area 1B sub-ACL was caught very early in the fishing year. So that has been closed. That area has been closed for the duration of the calendar year. Chris already mentioned this, but we published a notice of availability for the surf clam and ocean quahog species separation amendment, Amendment 21. The notice of availability published on December 29th, and the comment period closes on February 27th. So once the comment period closes, we'll have 30 days to announce our decision to approve or disapprove or partially approve that amendment. As Chris also mentioned, we have not published a proposed rule for that because we are still working with the industry and a couple of EFPs to really resolve how the monitoring and accountability will work under that proposed action. So a proposed rule would come out sometime after, assuming that we approve the amendment. On January 13th, also on surf clam and ocean quahogs, we published the final rule implementing status quo quotas for the 2026 surf clam and ocean quahog fisheries. The quotas have remained unchanged since 2004. But again, every year we have to publish a notice, a rule issuing those quotas. And then we have also suspended the minimum size limit for surf clams, as we have done every year since 2005. Scallop Research Set-Aside Program, we are finally able to solicit proposals for the 2026 Scallop RSA Notice of Funding Availability or Funding Opportunity. The solicitation is open for 60 days. It closes on March 23rd. Due to the late timing of this announcement, we may not issue a 2027 Scallop RSA Notice of Funding Opportunity. And we may, but not necessarily, we may allocate or award most, if not all, of the 2026 and 2027 research set-aside scallops under the proposals we receive under this competition. So researchers out there, people that are interested in scallop research, if you're interested in something for 2027, you might still want to put a proposal in now while you have the opportunity. Back to clams, we're planning to sunset the GARFO's outdated clam dealer reporting webpage in the near future. Currently, clam dealers report all clam purchases directly to GARFO, while purchases of all other species are reported to ACCSP. Clam dealers will be transitioned to ACCSP's electronic dealer reporting application. And transitioning clam dealer reporting to the EDR, electronic dealer reporting application, will streamline dealer data flows and align our reporting processes across our species. Our port agents are conducting outreach to clam dealers and will continue to do so when we're ready to begin the transition process. Just noting that some dealers are already familiar with the electronic dealer reporting system because they report other species. And so it's only people that are only reporting clams for whom this would be a new change. Otherwise, if a dealer is already using the EDR system through ACCSP for other species, then they won't have to have 2 different reporting systems. And as I said, the port agents will be available to provide training and support. We anticipate completing the transition by the end of the month, although we may extend that if we need to work with some dealers to make sure that they're prepared and able to make that transition. Just note on ILX vessel hold capacity framework. This was framework 16 by the Mid-Atlantic Council. As of early this month, February 2026, roughly 85% of permitted vessels have submitted the required volumetric fish hold baseline measurements for limited access ILX squid permits. The deadline was November 28th, 2025. So vessels that have not yet submitted a hold measurement will be unable to renew their 2026 permits until the requirement is met. We're continuing to work closely with the remaining vessel owners and fleet managers to ensure that they have everything they need to obtain the measurements and complete their permit renewals. That's all I have on my list. I will note a couple things because Chris mentioned a couple of actions. We are still waiting for clearance from headquarters for an in-season action to increase the 2026 mackerel quota. We talked about that at the December meeting. And we're also still waiting for the recreational measures setting process, or Harvest Control Rule 2.0. We need that rule in place in order to proceed with the 2026 recreational measures for summer flounder, black sea bass, and scup, because the council and board actions both relied on that HCR 2.0 process. So just flagging that those are late, but we hope that we'll see some action on them soon. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any questions on the GARFO report? Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mike, for the report. We appreciate the GARFO report, but to the last couple items that you mentioned, I was wondering, we were talking about the report at the staff level in terms of what's included in the report and what's not included in the report. And typically in the written report, it doesn't include all of the submitted thing, all the actions that the council's taken, right? And just to help us keep track, to help everyone keep track, it might be a good idea just to have those in the written report as well. So your last example of that rec measures framework might be a good thing to have.
So you mean in the status of actions report that we provide?
I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. Status of actions report.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Yeah,
let
thank
staff
you.
know that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Mike, not seeing any hands around well, amongst council members. I keep trying to do that. We do have some from the audience. So I had Katie Almeida first, and then Eric Reed, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. I have a question. What is the drive behind wanting to loosen up the horsepower regulation?
So a question for me, Katie?
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. Well, I think, this is something that both councils and the regional office will take a look at through this action to see whether it makes sense to change them. I think, we have long known that horsepower is a very, I guess, fungible number. Depending on how an engine is tuned, it can be, the actual horsepower can be very different from the listed number. But in many cases, that baseline requirement, so 10% or 20% above the the listed number way back when, can be very constraining. In some cases, engines aren't even built at those horsepowers anymore. We've heard that it really constrains the ability of some vessel owners to upgrade their vessel and make them safer, more fuel efficient, and also just sort of comport with kind of the realities of today's engines. And so we are encouraging the two councils to take a look at that and see if we either eliminate the baseline, the horsepower baseline altogether, or make some adjustments in terms of the range of horsepowers that might be available to vessel owners based on their baseline. Obviously, we want people to be able to use safe, modern, fuel-efficient engines and not be constrained by whatever their horsepower was 20, 30 years ago. I think also how we manage a lot of our fisheries has changed quite a bit. So instead of managing just with straight days at sea, where the speed the vessel could go had an impact on how much they could catch on a day at sea, we're managing many of our fisheries differently in a way where fishing power or at least the speed of the vessel, the horsepower of the engine, is much less important to assessing fishing power and fishing effort.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Okay. Thanks, Mike. I just want to bring up that one of the issues that we brought up when speaking against the ILEX hold measurements was that, excuse me, that ability to upgrade and how it's constraining when you are trying to find a new upgraded vessel. Not new, but new to you upgraded vessel. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Eric Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is about the new fluke exemption. What's the status of that, Mr. Pentney?
That rule is with headquarters under review.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Eric. Mike, that was the last hand, so I
Could
will.
I just make one comment?
What's that? Oh,
Could I just
yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
more thing?
Sure.
Because I'm surprised nobody asked me about the monument. And so as staff mentioned under Chris's report, the president issued a proclamation on Friday, authorizing under his proclamation fishing inside the monument. We have submitted a final rule package to headquarters yesterday to remove the Magnuson Act regulation that prohibits commercial fishing in the monument. So that has been submitted and will be undergoing review. But I would just remind everybody that's listening that although the fishing prohibition in the monument has been removed through the president's proclamation, the deep sea coral action and the prohibition on bottom tending fishing gear within the deep sea coral area remains in place. And so, as I understand it, and obviously we're working through the details of this, inside the monument that's outside of the deep sea coral area, so shoalward of the deep sea coral area, all bottom tending and other gears would be allowable. Within the deep sea coral area in the monument, deep sea red crab would be able to resume fishing in that area, and pelagic or highly migratory species fishing would be able to resume in the area. That's all I have on that.
Okay, but we did get a hand on that, so I'll go back to Eric Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just so we're clear that opening the monument doesn't open 5,000 square miles to bottom tending gear. It really only amounts to about 526 square miles in that inshore region of the deep sea coral zone. So that's all we're talking about. So anybody that thinks differently is incorrect. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eric. One more hand, Lori Nolan.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if Mike or Eric do we have a fathom line inside of what square mileage is huge? Do we know what the fathom line is that inside of can fish?
Well, you can, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but, you can go look at there's maps available of the deep sea coral area.
Right.
The New England Council
Yeah.
put in place. And so that's what is controlling, with this new proclamation, the deep sea coral area is what's controlling. So
Right. Thank
everything
you.
outside or inshore of the deep sea coral area would be available.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks. Eric, did you have a follow-up too?
Yeah, I mean, to Lori's question, the deep sea coral zone enacted by New England, that line is at a maximum depth of 327 fathoms, which is far beyond where you're going to go, Lori, I think. But yeah, anything inside of 327 fathoms is open bottom tending gear. And of course, there are tilefish GRAs in that area as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Okay, sorry, I switched screens there for a second. All right, no more hands, so we will move on. The next report up, and I will say I have seen everyone's name for the organizational reports, so we should be able to go through all of these. Next up is the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, so I'll go to John here. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I want to acknowledge that we are grieving the loss of Jada Summit, Captain Gus Sanfilippo, Paul Beal Sr., Paul Beal Jr., John Rusanides, Freeman Short, and Sean Therian of the fishing vessel Lily Jean. And I am grateful to the Gloucester fishing community for accepting Jada, a fisheries observer, as one of their own. We are also grieving the loss of Captain Tommy Williams. He was a long-term member of the Northeast Fisheries Science Center study fleet. Our deepest condolences to all their families and friends, and our thoughts are with all of those who were affected by these two tragic events. And I also want to thank the U.S. Coast Guard and the other fishing vessels that engaged in the search and rescue operations for the Lily Jean. Their efforts are deeply appreciated. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will now continue with my report. In terms of survey activities, Northeast Fisheries Science Center is preparing for the spring bottom trawl survey. We reported here before that the survey will be conducted from the NOAA ship Pisces. She is currently in Norfolk, being outfitted to support the survey. All the activities are going as planned, but there are still a number of steps that are needed to get her ready to sail. So Science Center staff and Office of Marine and Aircraft Operations staff are working hard to get her out of Norfolk on time. Cooperative research, the Cooperative Research Summit is occurring in 2 weeks, February 26th in Riverhead, New York. The event includes a tour of the Shinnecock commercial fishing and pack-out docks and a welcome reception in addition to the main summit, and hope to see some of you there. The event is at capacity. And it should be a good day to really focus on what we can do together cooperatively. Northeast Trawl Advisory Panel, the regional industry-based bottom trawl survey, sort of the phase 1 survey, is anticipated to sail this spring, and we'll be reporting more fully on how that goes at a later date. And then there's an NTAP, full NTAP panel meeting tomorrow at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. Observer programs, the biological port sampling program has transitioned from the regional office to the Science Center. In the October to December time period, 70% of the planned samples were completed. This was during the shutdown, so there were some bumps in the transition, but we are expecting to get the sampling up to 100% here as the program matures. In terms of the Northeast Fisheries Observer Program, 98% of the planned coverage was accomplished in the October to December time period, and we continue to deploy observers in our NEFSC program, in the at-sea monitoring program with New England groundfish, and in the industry-funded scallop program. In terms of our protected species updates, Dr. Moore gave a good update on North Atlantic right whale, so I won't go into that anymore. Just want to reiterate that 22 calves cited is a good number. The population has been growing slowly over the past several years, and having that number of calves should help the population recover further. On-demand gear, continue to work with fishermen in trialing and learning about the use of on-demand gear in the region. The work, experimental fishery under the Atlantic large whale take reduction team in the lobster fishery restricted area. That work started on February 1st and is going well in terms of trialing the gear and evaluating conflict, how to reduce and prevent conflict with mobile gear. Offshore wind, we continue to work on developing the survey mitigation program. There's been some ups and downs in that effort as we sort of work through the the landscape on which offshore wind developments are moving forward and which ones may not be. We are actively working with all the developers who have approval to develop on their survey mitigation plans, and hope to be finalizing some of those efforts in the next 6 to 12 months. We also have developed draft regional monitoring standards for offshore wind development projects, and thank you very much for the council comments on that. We're in the process of incorporating that and finalizing that document. Ecosystem-based fisheries management. The State of the Ecosystem Report is planned to be released spring 2026 on the usual schedule. Some of the indicators may not contain full 2025 data due to disruptions in data stream. And the team has also been receiving notable observations from industry via a dedicated email address and through the council communication channels. And so that information will also be included. The team, our ecosystem-based fisheries management efforts also include the continued development of ecosystem and socioeconomic profile. They had been part of the research track process. That process is on hold. And so we are focusing more on what we're calling snapshot ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles. So you'll be seeing more of those coming in the future. And then we have our science highlights and newsletter that we put out monthly, and you can, if you're interested in, it's a subscription based, just you don't have to pay for it, but you do have to subscribe to it. And if anyone is interested in subscribing, they can reach out to me and I can send them the subscription information. And so that's the end of my report, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Any questions for John? Eric Reed?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for talking so much, but I appreciate Dr. Hare mentioning the industry-based trawl survey pilot program phase 1. But phase 2 has been fully funded by Congress to the tune of $3 million. And that is already being planned by NTAP and the NTAP working group responsible for that action. So that's a good thing.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Reed. We have not received our allocations as of yet based on the 2026 budget. It's typically, takes some time. So when and if the funds arrive at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, we would plan to execute them per the NTAP plan.
Okay, well, thank you both. And Eric, no need to apologize, please. We appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, and just to add to Dr. Hare's last comment, Mr. Chair, that money is most likely going to be available in 12 to 16 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you again. We'll move on to NOAA Office of General Counsel, John O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound good, John.
Okay, thanks. Today is a first for me with council work. It's the first council meeting I had to shovel snow to get to, so I guess that's another downside of having a remote meeting. But I look forward to seeing everyone in New York in April. My report today is going to be fairly brief. I just have two cases to report on. The first one is the Relentless case. You may recall this is the companion case to Loper Bright that challenged industry-funded monitoring program for the herring industry. This was a case that was originally brought in the District of Rhode Island, and after the Supreme Court ruling, the case was sent back down to the District Court, where, you know, sort of the post-Loper Bright world, without the Chevron doctrine, the issues were briefed again in that new context. The district court ruled in favor of NEFSC, and the case is now up in the First Circuit, and it's currently, the briefing is underway in the First Circuit. It should be wrapped up before spring. The second case I'm going to report on is the New England Fishermen's Stewardship Association case. You may recall this one is the Appointments Clause challenge to the New England Council's Ground Fish Framework 65. There have been multiple cases around the country, including one against a Mid-Atlantic action raising Appointments Clause challenges as to the council system. And in this case, the district court in the District of Maine issued a ruling very similar to the ruling that the Third Circuit issued in the Lofstad case. And the Lofstad case was the challenge to the Mid-Atlantic Council action. So that the ruling out of the district court, basically in the Maine case, the court severed two of the provisions that it found problematic from Magnuson, and by doing so, found that the councils didn't have significant authority without those two provisions that would raise Appointments Clause concerns. And the two provisions were 304C3, which require council approval for a secretarial action to pursue limited access programs, and 304H, which require a 3/4 council approval for the secretary to repeal or revoke an FMP. So that was the ruling out of the district court. The case went up to the First Circuit after that, and briefing is all done, and the court has scheduled oral argument for March 2nd. So that would be in Boston on March 2nd. That's all I have to report this month. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Any questions on General Counsel report? Okay. Not seeing any hands, we'll move on, and we're going to go to Office of Law Enforcement, Caleb Gilbert. And Caleb, I'll just give you the intro of saying that Chris, as you know, did pass on your request, so hopefully everyone took a look at that, and if folks have comments on how to handle the quarterly reports, we'll get to those after your report. Thanks.
Oh, that sounds great, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Dr. Moore, for passing that along to the group email there. I'm personally very appreciative of that. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, you sound good.
Should probably start by asking that. So my name is Caleb Gilbert. I'm the compliance liaison for the Northeast Division of NOAA Fisheries Office of Law Enforcement. I have a couple details to share with the council today. We're still in the process of updating our FY 2026 regional priorities. I know I mentioned in December I might have those available to convey to the council at this meeting. Hopefully I'll be able to provide an update on those at the April meeting. Hopefully I'll be able to attend the April meeting in person. So see you all there. Next, a quick personnel update. I think I mentioned months ago that OLE was cleared to begin backfilling vacant leadership positions. That's finally happening for AD, assistant director positions at different locales across the country, including here in the Northeast Division, should post soon. Another highlight I wanted to share, kind of separate, is that a program to equip our enforcement officers with body cameras is moving forward. I don't have a timeline available for implementation on that if folks are interested, other than that it will be in the near future. Next, moving on to some trade enforcement update. Since the December meeting, so far in FY 2026, the Northeast Division has conducted a total of 33 trade monitoring patrols or operations. So that's going back to October 1st, 2025. We've conducted 21 new trade monitoring patrols or operations since the last meeting in December. I don't have any new closed cases, related cases to report to the council at this time, but our current trade enforcement casework is substantial. Moving on to our enforcement support of North Atlantic right whale conservation, our work on speed rule enforcement continues to help alleviate the threat of ship strikes. In early January, Division 2, so that's our more southern area, special agent closed a North Atlantic right whale speed rule case with a NOVA penalty involving violations that occurred in November and December of 2023 and January and March of 2024. And that was involving a container tanker vessel based out of the UK. Regarding our sort of efforts to deter gear entanglement prong for North Atlantic right whale conservation and, well, all large whales. Our D1 enforcement officer recently closed a case where a NOVA penalty was issued for take reduction plan violations on a Lobster Management Area 3 patrol we conducted in October of 2024. Violations on this vessel that our enforcement officer identified include failure to meet the minimum number of traps per trawl, no vertical line, color marking, and no weak breaking strength line. And also, General Counsel Enforcement Section recently issued a charge for a wet storage violation identified by a Division 1 enforcement officer and our D1 supervisory enforcement officer while on one of the mid-range Lobster Management Area 1 OLE patrols we conducted last June. If you don't recall, OLE conducted a number of mid-range, so not offshore in LMA 3, in LMA 1, patrols on board contracted patrol vessels last year. Actually, I think I already mentioned this before at a previous meeting, but that included the first Lobster Management Area 3 fixed gear patrol we've ever conducted off the mid-Atlantic. Regarding our enforcement of take reduction plan regulations, I have information tallied from the fourth quarter FY 25 that I can share today. I'm a little bit lagging on that, I apologize, but from July 1st through September 30th last year, OLE and a number of our enforcement partners conducted a very large number of take reduction plan focused patrols. A lot of those do occur more frequently in the summer than the colder months, but during that quarter period, Maine Marine Patrol, Delaware Natural Resources Police, Massachusetts Environmental Police, New Hampshire Fish and Game, and Virginia Marine Patrol all contributed alongside OLE to conduct a total of 63 take reduction plan focused patrols that quarter. As always, MMP, Maine Marine Patrol, conducted the majority of those patrols, and many of the Mid-Atlantic state conducted patrols involved inspection of conch fish trap trawls. So in the fourth quarter, our OLE and our enforcement partners collectively inspected trawls from 388 vessels on separate take reduction plan focused patrol days and observed a high compliance rate on those inspections. Moving on, another case I'd like to report to the council today involves the owner of 2 vessels charged with a NOVA penalty, where the vessels were found to have operated with significant negative scallop IFQ balances over the course of many trips taken between April 1 and October 7th, 2024. At one point in October 2024, one vessel was operating with a negative IFQ balance of over 20,000 pounds, and those LAGC vessels were based in New Jersey. Regarding VMS, quick report. I reported to the New England Fishery Management Council a couple of weeks ago, so I'll mention just quickly here as well that there was a software glitch, NIMS, identified on January 1st affecting just the Woods Hole Group VMS declarations and forms globally. The issue has now been completely resolved, and all trip corrections have been sent to GARFO to ensure accurate accounting, but any questions or concerns about that, please let me know or someone on our VMS support team. There's one new blue line tilefish case that closed since the last meeting I can report on, but it was on a commercial vessel. So I think the majority of the focus is on the recreational blue line tilefish fishery, but that was from a commercial vessel from a Montauk boarding on October 30th of last year. It was involved EVTR non-compliance, and we closed the case with compliance assistance. But continue to try to update the council with any new closed blue line tilefishes cases that become available. I don't have anything new to report regarding our priority support of the observer program. I'll just say, as John mentioned earlier as well, no words can express the sorrow I feel over the loss of the Lily Jean and her crew, as well as the gentleman lost out of Stonington. On the Lily Jean, the last VMS signal we received was at 6:12 a.m. Friday, January 30th. The next signal we should have received would have been an hour later at 7:12 a.m. Division 1 enforcement officer was on site to assist U.S. Coast Guard, state, and local PD on the day the vessel was lost. My heart goes out to all the family and friends of those lost. And we at NED send out all of our most heartfelt condolences, and I want to send out my condolences as well to those impacted at the center regarding Jada's loss. And that is all I have to report today, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to end on a somber note there, but I'm more than happy to take any questions if folks have them.
Yes, thank you, Kayla. Yeah, obviously no reason to apologize. I mean, I think similarly, one thing that wasn't said was, it was unfortunate how our scheduling landed, and that this council meeting, kind of interfered with the timing of that recognition of the lost individuals. We had folks that were, trying to do two things at once during a very tough time. With that, I will look to see if there are any questions, or we could even move right into discussions, as I mentioned earlier. Caleb is interested to know if there are ways to improve the quarterly reports. I certainly have a few comments myself, Caleb, but okay. I'll look for hands amongst council members. Not seeing any hands right now. I gave it some thought, especially in the context of the notion that there might be a hope to streamline. But quite frankly, I think, a lot of the breakdowns in the reports anticipate the questions I've certainly heard around the table over the years. As you kind of drill down into some of the stuff, there's a lot under right whale, but I think of, the breakdown on vessel speed reports as being of value and of interest to council members. I particularly like to see the breakdown by regulation. So, what were Atlantic coastal violations versus Magnuson versus state regulations and stuff like that. I think it's very useful. So in general, I would just say I appreciate the detail, and I think it kind of goes towards the questions. I know that these report outs usually happen, or always happen at the, at the end of sometimes a very long week is the way I meant to word that. And so having that detail ahead of time, I think is quite useful.
No, I can't thank you enough for that feedback, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate it. I want to say we passed on a similar message to Chairman Salerno and Dr. O'Keefe with the New England Fishery Management Council, and I interestingly received very, very similar feedback to your own. Certainly from the standpoint of me, who has to pull these reports together, the more I can align the two efforts, the better my workload goes. But certainly, if there's feedback that's quite disparate from one council to the other, I would hope we'd accommodate that to the best of our ability. But thank you very much for that. And certainly, if there's any this obviously this feedback can be iterative. So if anytime anyone has thoughts or suggestions on how we can improve our report, we're always open to that. So thanks again, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I see Chris has his hand up. But Chris, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Caleb. So just to let you know, we are going to provide some staff comments. As soon as we can bundle those up, we'll get those to you and certainly share those with the council as well. So look probably within a week, you'll be getting some comments from us. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore.
Okay, with that, we could move on to the U.S. Coast Guard report. And I saw Lieutenant Commander Moan on here. So Josh, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is the Coast Guard East District Enforcement Report for the 1st of December through the end of January. During the period, East District law enforcement units conducted 114 fisheries boardings. Of those boardings, 3 of those had some fisheries violations. On the 5th of January, the Bruckenthal issued an enforcement action report to a wreck vessel for exceeding catch limit of black sea bass, retaining undersized black sea bass, retaining gag grouper during a closed season, and retaining undersized gag grouper. On the 6th of January, the Coast Guard Cutter Lawson issued an enforcement action report to a commercial fishing vessel for fishing without a valid operator's permit. And on the 21st of January, Coast Guard Cutter Angela McShann issued an enforcement action report to a commercial fishing vessel for fishing without a valid operator's permit also. For marine protected species, we continue to execute our annual North Atlantic right whale operation intended to educate mariners and enforce the ship strike reduction rule. Additionally, on the 26th of January, my office received a request from NOAA to acquire the position of an entangled North Atlantic right whale off of North Carolina. We ended up launching an air asset to find the whale and confirm surface telemetry. However, due to poor on-scene weather, we could not observe and identify the whale. Thankfully, NOAA was able to coordinate their own air asset the following day and reacquire the whale, as mentioned earlier. For operations that we still have ongoing, Op Right Speed, which is our North Atlantic right whale enforcement operation. Additionally, we have Op Fin Finder targeting vessels fishing for bluefin tuna off of North Carolina. We are still conducting Op Stars and Stripers, targeting vessels fishing for striped bass in the EEZ off of New Jersey and Virginia. And additionally, a new operation we have going on is Op Bluefin Bounty, which targets vessels fishing for Atlantic bluefin tuna off of Virginia. Of the 114 boardings we conducted during this period, 76 were commercial vessels, 35 were recreational vessels, and 3 were passenger vessels. For commercial fishing vessel safety efforts, we conducted 73 dockside exams, 62 decals were issued, and we had 7 terminations of commercial fishing vessels. There were 4 reported marine casualties during this period. There was an elision on the 29th of January. Sector of Virginia received a report that the fishing vessel Pacifics had an elision with the security barrier at Naval Station Norfolk and was stuck. The vessel was thankfully able to break loose later from the barrier with no damage to the barrier or the vessel, and safely moored at Wanchese Fish Company. On the 1st of December, Sector Maryland National Capital Region received a report of an overdue vessel. Maryland State Police Aviation Command conducted an overflight and found the vessel idle doing circles with no one on board. The Coast Guard and local agencies conducted several searches. Unfortunately, we could not find the captain and had to suspend the search. On the 4th of December, Sector Virginia received a report that the fishing vessel Sheila Renee was disabled with the engine unrepairable. Coast Guard Cutter Pompano towed the vessel to anchorage near Watcher Creek, Virginia, and Station Portsmouth brought the vessel to LD Armor Co., where it was safely moored. Lastly, there was a medical evacuation on the 4th of October. Sector Delaware Bay received a report that fishing vessel Ocean Provider had a crew member exhibiting stroke symptoms, approximately 60 nautical miles east of Cape May, New Jersey. Air Station Atlantic City was launched, was able to hoist the patient and safely transported them to medical care. For outreach efforts for commercial fishing vessels, East District and sector units continue outreach efforts with thousands at the Ocean City Watermen's Expo, which happened back on the 16th of January. East District and sector units also conducted outreach at the Mid-Atlantic Sport and Boat Co. that just wrapped up a couple weeks ago here in Virginia Beach. East District and sector units continue outreach efforts through dock walks, training, and other educational efforts, and we are still conducting active commercial fishing vessel safety trainings throughout the AOR. That concludes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for Josh? Okay, not seeing any. Appreciate that report. And we'll move on and need to switch over here and sorry, bring up my agenda. Okay, so that'll bring us to the liaison reports. And I'll look to Bobby for New England Council report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Give me just a second to pull it up. I'm trying to do two things at once here. This is going to work. All right, I think I got it. First off, I'd like to start by, I appreciate Mr. Almeida's recusal and financial disclosure review yesterday. And as Councilman Bob, I just want to let him know I take no offense in being used as examples. As far as the report, it's not a whole lot going on really. The January meeting of the New England Fisheries Management Council, the rough overview is they decided for tighter rec groundfish limits for the Western Gulf of Maine cod and Gulf of Maine haddock. Second update was habitat. New England initiated an update on the EFH for scallops and groundfish. They are replacing 2005 data with species distribution models that account for climate shift. Final council recommendations expected in early 2027. Not to be used for fishery restricting fisheries, but it's to guide future habitat conservation. Thirdly, they discussed and accepted a limited access general category individual fishing quota LAGC IFQ program review. The review found the program is effective in meeting its goals and identifying several issues facing the fleet, including increased consolidation, rising dependence on quota leasing, and safety concerns due to an aging fleet. The report is available at New England Council website. Also, 2026 and 2027 scallop RSA solicitation is now open through March 23rd, 2026. Because applicants may not have sufficient time to prepare for field work this year, NOAA Fisheries acknowledged that field work may need to start in 2027. The notice highlights the priority topics. High is resource surveys, but the lower priorities are noted. Fourthly, monkfish was discussed, but we've already talked about that. And the last thing was an update on the Holistic Strategy Plan Initiative, which if there's any questions for that, Jason didn't attend that, and he should be able to answer any questions. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Great, I appreciate that, Bobby. I'll look for hands if there are any questions on the New England Council report. Okay, not seeing any hands. Sorry. So I recognize Ted Platts, who's the New England Council liaison to the MID. Go ahead, Ted.
Have you got me now?
There you go. Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I hit a couple buttons there. Sorry. Perhaps this isn't necessary, but yeah, I'm about 5 days into losing the struggle in the winter cold and flu season, so I was hesitant to speak earlier. But if it suits you or Miss Nolan, I can address some of the monkfish ITQ issues now, or I need, if that's not necessary. I kind of felt like I was a bit remiss in not wanting to engage, mostly just due to the way I'm feeling. So whatever's your pleasure, sir, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I very much appreciate that offer. I think, and we didn't see any other hands at the time. So I guess, if you and Lori want to have a discussion on the side, or as I mentioned, any council members could reach out either through Jason and the council to you or to you directly. I think that would work, and that might give you a break from speaking right now.
Yeah, that suits me just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I didn't see any hands, so I'll assume that everyone's okay with that. As far as the South Atlantic Council report, I know we do have the South Atlantic liaison, Judy Helmy, online. I know she might have been having some technical difficulties, but I think she may be off the hook as well, since I don't think there is anything to report out of the South Atlantic Council. We also have Sunny Gwynn on, who's the MIDS liaison to the South Atlantic. So if I am mistaken, okay, Sunny, I see your hand up if you want to go ahead.
I'll just report it. It was just on one thing of interest, and it's just for the time, but there was a motion made, and it was to appoint Nathan Everett and Corey Gwynn as the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council representatives, excuse me, on the mackerel cobia advisory panel, and it was approved by the council. So I believe that's all I have to say. And if there's anything else any questions, just please don't hesitate. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Sonny, for reporting that out. So any questions or comments on the South Atlantic report? Okay. I'm not seeing any. So that'll conclude the liaison reports. We did have at least one hand that wanted to speak towards other business. So, and I see Bonnie Brady as well. And Jason. So let's go to Jason first. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks. Just flagging that we've started to track new inclusion of smooth dogfish in CITES Appendix 2 and potential fallout for spiny dogfish, given some concern that if you have mixed or similar appearing products, processed products, there can be spillover across species with international trade. Was briefly discussed at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission last week. They're getting a presentation on it at their May meeting. It's not, again, clear exactly what impacts, if any, it may have for spiny dogfish, but some folks are concerned that it might, so we've started to track that.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. And I know the commission is as well, and Tony Kearns reported on that to the commission at their February meeting. So I'll go in order, I guess, as this went. So we had Todd Elder put a comment in that he'd like to raise his hand for other business earlier, so I will turn to Todd. Go ahead. Todd, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. Okay, I did see one other hand, so I'll go to Bonnie Brady, and then I'll actually have him scroll down to see if Todd's still online. So go
Hey,
ahead.
Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, Bonnie Brady, New England Fishermen's Stewardships Association. I just wanted to bring to the council's attention, and I did forward a copy of this to Chris and to Mary, but the Army Corps of Engineers published a application for a aquaculture farm permit in federal waters off of southern New England, 20 miles off of Newport Harbor. It's called the Newport Mussel Farms site. It is, oh gosh, real quick, let's see, a total of 3,806 acres. And it is in an area that I believe it would be some of the mobile gear that work in that area may be affected. I will like I said, I forwarded that information to you. They put it on the Federal Register. I'm sorry, the Army Corps released it yesterday. And so comments are due by March 11th, and you can request a public hearing. So I just wanted to let everyone know. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that update, Bonnie. And I did see something in the chat, so I'll go back to Todd Elder. Go ahead.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. We have it. Go ahead.
It's not much more to expand on than what's in the email I sent. Basically, I've been having trouble finding a black sea bass permit. I have approximately 3,000 pounds of sea bass quota for the state of Virginia, which, yeah, is probably a small number compared to most of the commercial fishermen. But I run a small business here, and I depend on these fish for the winter. It's one fish that I can go out hook and line and get by until the water warms up. So I have spoke with Ted Hawes quite a bit, and I've had no luck. I got like a broker or agent with Ethereum looking for a suitable permit for the new boat. Haven't been able to find one. So the maximum baseline for the permit that I have is 30 feet. The new vessel that I've owned for just over a year is 34 feet 8 inches. And the horsepower allowance is way off. So I got a restriction of 216 horsepower, and the current boat is 440 horsepower. So I'm just hoping that you can do something for me so I can get out there and fish this winter. I did a bit of research on why this was first implemented in the 90s, and seems to be kind of outdated, but also I understand that now that this has been put in place, sorry about that, you know, it's put a huge value to the permits that are for high horsepower and larger vessels. So if you do a one time for me, then I guess the argument is that, oh, other people are going to want this as well, which I think should be allowed for the smaller boats, especially when it's a difference of like 4 feet. I still possess the smaller boat, and it's extremely dangerous to go as far. The water temperature has dropped so much. The sea bass have pushed out So for a small boat, it's very risky to go out there. I had a close call, so that is kind of put an all stop to going on the small boat. Am I still connected here?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I know that you guys have probably had this, or I know that you guys have had this request from other fishermen as well, about the transfer and whatnot. So I'm just hoping that you can. Basically, Ted says his hands are tied, and I need to speak with you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could only start off by saying that these types of requests, bringing this information forward is kind of the evolution and how these things get revisited, as you might have heard throughout the meeting here today, on some of the baseline issues. I don't know if anyone else, either council staff or others that might have comments on this, on your particular case. Unfortunately, I do not. So I'll just look to see if anyone else wants to speak to it for a moment. If not, I'll just say, Julia Beatty's got her hand up. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, just I've spoken to Mr. Elder on the phone, and as was talked about earlier in this meeting, the council does have plans to look at the current vessel baseline restrictions, both in terms of length and horsepower, and think about if they warrant revisions or any changes to them, potentially as a joint action with the New England Council. But that is a longer term thing. There's no management action initiated for that yet. I think council members all understand that if there is a management action, we need to develop alternatives and have multiple council meetings, and there's a rulemaking process. So I've said to Mr. Elder that if the regulation itself changes, that it would be, in all likelihood, like maybe a few years in the future for all those steps to happen if the council goes down that path. So that's not really, it's definitely something that the council is aware of and thinking about, but it's not something that can grant kind of like immediate relief to the vessel baseline restrictions. So as staff and talking with GARFO, we tried to think about, is there any like avenue for like so my understanding of Mr. Elder's request is that it's for a temporary exemption while that longer term process plays out, because like you said, he'd like to go fishing this winter. But talking about it among staff, we don't think there's an actual way for the council to do that. There are things such as exempted fishing permits, but the way that they're framed in the regulations, they're more for things like scientific research and things like that. So we didn't think that was an option in this case. And also applying for an exempted fishing permit for those types of reasons is still like a longer term process too. So just to kind of provide a little bit more background information for the council to think about the context of this request.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Appreciate the response on behalf of what the council staff has reviewed on that. I certainly didn't consider myself an expert on any path forward there either. So again, I appreciate you looking into that ahead of time for us. And I don't see any other hands. Well, I do now. So Todd Janeski, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, thanks. Todd Janeski, Virginia Council Rep. So Mr. Elder, can you, glad to hear that you've got a broker working with you. That sounds obviously that's the best way to go. Can you give us a little share information of what kind of data requests you've made some from Virginia to reach out to those that might possess what you're looking for?
Yeah, directly with Virginia, no. I didn't see that as the best route to go to. I went to Ted, and I mean, I'm looking at an email trail here that goes over a year and a half of back and forth with him on this initial request. He said at one point I will find one for you. I said, please do go ahead. And just, follow up emails, no reply, no reply, no reply. Phone call, finally get a hold of him. Oh, I haven't had any luck. Just this week, he sent me a spreadsheet of every permit holder for black sea bass and many other permits in the Northeast or GARFO area. And I've been calling and I haven't had much luck. So we'll see how that goes. But just to put things in perspective here, it's 3,000 pounds of black sea bass. Well, it's not even that, but I've invested over $30,000 to fish for black sea bass. So you can go on Ethereum's website right now, and what they have on offer is a permit that the closest one for me is a $40,000 permit. It's got lobster, summer flounder, multi-species attached to it. So it's not just a black sea bass permit. So that's way out of my, budget anyways, even do you kind of see where I'm at here?
Yes, yeah, and I think that is, one of the motivations for us taking a look at this again. But as Julia mentioned, as far as kind of the council process and the overall process for changes there, that is kind of a long-term look at how to address it.
I mean, it is outdated, right? Do you agree with me? I'm constricted by Virginia quota as well. So I don't understand why there couldn't be some sort of temporary swap. I'm not looking to increase the value of my permit. Like if I go to sell it, it would go back, put a contingency in there that it would go back to, the max baseline length and horsepower. And because I'm constricted by how much quota I have from Virginia as well. So I'm not looking to take advantage of any sort of system. I'm not looking to increase the value. I just want to go fish and make some money this winter. I squeaked out I made a little bit of money off some bluefin at the beginning there in January for about a week. And now I'm needing to go out there and catch some sea bass. So if I go out there on a 22-foot boat, 50 miles offshore, and something happens, it's not going to look good. So it's definitely a safety concern. The baseline restriction is limiting my utilization for the quota. And then I hear discouraging, oh yeah, it's going to take years. Well, I've already been speaking to Ted and a few other folks for a year and a half now. So.
Yeah, I understand, Mr. Elder, and I think those are important comments, and I think as this process moves forward, it's those types of comments that I think do need consideration. But as mentioned, I don't really think there's anything else that we can do here. So I will look for other hands on either other business, or we could also move into general public comments as well. So thank you.
Okay, just one last thing. So in the short term, there's no option. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as my understanding, that's correct. Yeah.
Great.
I see a hand from Jason Didden. Jason.
Just one clarification. Do you know if, Todd, if the permit lists that were given to you included CPH permits, confirmation of permit history permits that are quote unquote on the shelf, or was it just active permits?
I don't know that. It's just a very large spreadsheet. If you share your email, I'll forward it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to, I'm council staff also. just trying to kind of brainstorm any potential options for you there. So that is kind of a long, this is, maybe a low probability thing, but we can, I think I know what spreadsheet you're referring to, but yeah, if you send, I'll reach out to you so you have my email and can try to at least see if you have the complete permit list and if, and maybe there may be some other options out there. Again, might be a long shot, but I'm just kind of trying to brainstorm if there could be any other kind of workarounds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I haven't seen any other hands go up, but I will give one last call for other business that may be coming to come before us or general public comment. Jason, I'm assuming that's a legacy hand?
Sorry.
No, no worries. Okay. So I don't see any. With that, that would conclude business on our agenda, and with no additions, I will just quickly check with Chris Moore to see if there are any other items or just information we need to pass on today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, very good. With that, we can adjourn and conclude our February council meeting. I guess I still have to say safe travels, because anybody that is dealing with this weather, as John Almeida pointed out, is still an issue. And as Ted pointed out, we may be safe from giving each other colds and flus, but that's also still going on regularly around here. I'm with you there, Ted. But I want to thank everyone on council and in the public who has participated. I want to especially thank staff and the SSC and Paul particularly for his presentation and help. And we will call that a wrap and adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe,
Bye.
Chris, and staff.
Thank